fishermen can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of A View from the Top Floor. Today's guest is Mike Smith, a firefighter and engine company 48 in the Bronx. Mike is one of those guys that I think every firehouse or every company needs. He gets it. He has the passion for the job. He understands the traditions of the job. He takes training very, very seriously. But there's something that separates Mike from others, and that's his true compassion for the job. So I met Mike about halfway between our homes. We sat down and we chatted for about an hour or so, and I think that some of the things we talked about are some of the things that are being lost in the engine company. Now, this was an engine company episode, and Mike is an engine company professional. Beyond the paycheck, this is what it takes to be a good engineman, is having the mindset of Mike Smith. So stick around, check it out. It's a great conversation, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. Mike Smith, engine company 48 in the Bronx. Check it out.
How do you want to start it, man?
So, how did you even find out about Top Floor Tactics? And I was getting some messages here and there from you harassing me.
Yeah, throwing you shots like a typical fireman would.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a huge social media platform. You know what I mean? And, you know, a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, a majority, most of your stuff you put on there is very knowledgeable, very, very good stuff that you post, and you can tell that the stuff you post, you have the knowledge and the experience.
I appreciate that, but
you go in depth.
I do, and you know, I mainly do it for our job.
Okay.
And that's why sitting here and talking with you,
Sure.
it means a lot to me, because I never thought I'd get to this point of a social media platform and a podcast, and actually sitting down with guys that come from companies that I respect more than you'd ever know.
Sure.
So 48 Engine,
Yeah.
you know, one of the legendary engine companies in the New York City Fire Department. I really believe that.
Right.
And I mean, some of the names came out of there that are just off the charts. And I think that guys like yourself keep that tradition so far ingrained in what you're doing today.
Okay.
And it's so important. It's really so important that we do that.
100%.
And it's a lot of it, we ride the coattails of the brothers that came along before. I say it all the time, but 48 Engine is not one of those places. I feel you guys are probably more than ever at a level of training than most companies in the city. Like, you're elite almost in the sense of, and I see what you guys are doing.
Right. Well, you said that I keep the tradition going. I don't keep the tradition going. The company as a whole keeps the tradition going. And, you know, I'm a 11-year nobody on this job, which was fortunate enough to land in 48 Engine. When I got on the job, you know, they said, hey, you know, you hit the lotto, you know, getting on this job. Getting on that job, man, is taking a test and waiting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anyone could do that. Landing on your feet in a company like 48, where guys like Salka, Grasso, Tracy, everyone in the fire service knows Andy Fredericks. Landing in a company like that, that's lotto.
Yeah.
That's lotto. Getting on the job, and this is nothing against the job, that's like winning bingo in your local VFW. You know what I mean?
I like that, yeah.
You know, that means something.
Yeah.
And when I got to the firehouse, the senior man in the engine had 30 years. He worked with those guys, you know, and he rode the rig with those guys, the backstep with those guys, and everything that they taught, he passed down to the next guy, and then that trickles down to, you know, the next guy, the next guy, the next guy, and so on and so on, and it trickles down to the guy who just walks in the door for the very first time.
Yeah. So I have a very odd connection to 48 Engine from, like a second cousin of mine, who's I consider like a first cousin, but he's that much older of a generation than me. A guy I used to sell cars with
Okay.
worked in 48 inch.
Okay.
So he knew I was waiting to come on the job. Actually, I'd even taken the test yet. It was the mid 90s. He's like,
Okay.
hey, if you want to stop in the firehouse, you can go see Frank. I said, okay, I'll go see Frank. So I remember I turned 17. I got my license.
Sure.
I drove right to 48 engine because I wanted to see what a New York City firehouse was like on the
Right.
inside. You know,
Right.
like of course you watch it from afar and it's like looking at the New York Yankees. You know, and then next we'll go into the dugout with something special. And so that was my first connection to the New York City Fire Department with
Right.
48 engine.
Okay.
I had lunch, coffee, the whole
Right.
thing, and then we went a couple runs, and I was like, "This is what I expect the job to be." And that was mid 90s, and then fast forward to here we are today,
Okay.
and I still have the utmost respect for 48 because of that. Because what I saw over 20 years ago there, it's still there, and it,
100%.
again, and that comes from what you're doing in the company, and it's always progressively moving forward. It's never taking a turn for the worst. I feel like
Okay.
every firehouse has the tide goes in, tide goes out.
Right.
Every 5 years there's a change. Guys
Uh-huh.
get promoted, guys retire, and there's always a rebuilding process. But I think you guys have done a really good job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Again, that's not one single guy.
Yeah.
That's a company of guys. That's leadership from the senior men all the way down. You know, even the fire officers.
Yeah.
We have tremendous fire officers in the company, in the firehouse. So again, it's not just one single guy.
Yeah, and it's not an easy place to work in. You have to be all in. It's one of those places, the house of hate,
Well,
right? Like,
Yeah, the house of hate, sure. And you're correct with that statement. And like I said before, when we're a 5-man engine on the job, and I think we have 23 men on the roster. So when you're one of 23 that have a 48 front piece, 48 collar brass, and you're working in a place like the men I mentioned before, it's not an option. Like
you're in.
you're in.
If
You're-
not, you're out. And
Yeah.
I've seen that with your place, and my old place, and my place today. All places that you have to be in.
Right.
And if you're not, you're asked to leave.
Right.
And there's not too many places left where you're asked to leave.
Right.
And it's always fortunate to be in the company of guys that are from those places because you understand.
Sure.
So what are some of the drills you guys are doing? You know, we're always talking about company drills. We're always drilling the forceful entry door. We're drilling on search.
Okay.
But what is it that makes 48 or separates 48 from other engine companies where the company drills, passing on that legacy of what Andy Frederick probably provided with the drills when he was
Sure.
there to today?
Well, speaking from my experience, I'm going to say the best piece of advice I've been given was by a guy who got promoted out of my place. He's now a lieutenant in Lower Manhattan. He told me, you want to be a good engineman, get good at being a problem solver and a good communicator. And this is not a knock on anyone or any fire department or any crew or any guy. To me, you know, if you're day in, day out stretching a line in an empty parking lot to flow water, I don't see the value there. Okay. And what I mean by that is, do we do that in my company? Yeah. When we have a new guy and when we have a new chauffeur, we'll take him out to, you know, I'm sure you know where Fordham University is. New chauffeur will hook up to a hydrant. New probie will stretch and operate a hand line. That way he gets used to the nozzle reaction and how to handle and manipulate a line and what we expect for him being a 48 nozzleman, because you're not in probie school anymore. But for me, the most valuable drill aspect I feel is what me and you are doing right now. And it's that tabletop discussion amongst the guys you're working with on that tour. You're a truck guy, I'm an engine guy. I think it's a fair statement to say that any scenario that you guys encounter on a truck, there's probably a tool that's designated to fix that problem. Yes, you need to know how to use that tool, but there is a tool that's going to go along with that. Hence a door, a lock, a gate. a man under, a car door, so on and so on and so on. A lot of times when you're met with a challenge or an obstacle in the engine, there's really nothing we could go back to the rig and get off a shelf. And that's when you got to start using this. And that's when you got to start talking between the guys that you're working with. Hey, we have a street full of double parked cars. How are we going to get around this? Hey, we got to go to the top floor of an H-type. There's no well hole. We're going to wait for second due. You know, hey, we got to get around this scaffolding. Hey, there's a snowbank and the hydrant's frozen. Now there's a 1070. How are we going to do this? It's stuff like that. You know, the constant communication back and forth. You know, when you come in, you know, you talk it up, you know, just like you and I did before we even started. You asked me, did you catch any work? You know, you ask, hey, anyone catching any work? Yeah, what'd you have? What'd you see? What'd you do? You know, where was it? What type of building? And then it snowballs from there. And then that 5-minute conversation now expands. And I could honestly say that happens every tour I work.
It's good.
You know?
There's nothing I hate more than when you know there was some workarounds and you go in for your next set and no one's talking about it. It angers me. It's like,
right.
We should be talking about this at the changing tours, you
Sure.
know? Especially if it was like that, those guys relieving each other, you know,
Right.
like they had that set or whatever.
Right.
Okay, let's go back to problem solving. I love that you said that because I was just talking with the probies the other day and we were going through like the stresses of engine and truck, first do engine and truck. And I was the truck officer in the scenarios.
Okay.
Right? It was a hands-on class.
Sure.
And a million mistakes were made, which I expect because we put a little bit of extra stress with no smoke or fire, just a little bit of extra stress into the situation to see how they perform. Extra stress meaning like I get off the rig and I go in without telling them. Now they have to remember what was the address, what building did he go into, right? All these things and end up dominoes begin to fall the wrong way when they realize I'm out of position and that internal clock's ticking. And even probies have like, I should be doing something, but I'm not doing something. Something's wrong.
Okay.
So in the critique afterwards, I was saying that in the truck company, we make a million mistakes in every fire. Every run we go to, we make mistakes.
Okay.
But most of the time, people don't know the mistakes we've made.
Okay.
So you go to the roof, and maybe you did something wrong on the roof, right? But you never tell anyone. Or if you're on the inside, I can't tell you how many times I've taken a mirror in a bathroom thinking it's a window.
Okay.
But it's just a common mistake on
Sure.
a fire.
Sure.
Don't ever tell anyone about it. So it's like the truck can dance around mistakes, where in the engine company integrity is everything because you cannot make a mistake. It is so critical that once that mistake is made, it's very hard to recover from. And then when you don't recover, the dominoes begin to fall the wrong way and we don't get water on the fire. So we always dismiss the engine, and that's a common thing in the fire service, especially in our job. We always dismiss the engine. Oh, it's a truck job. It's a truck job.
Okay.
But you can make a mistake in the engine, and you can, but you have to be that good to correct it. And that's what you were saying. And that's where communication comes in.
Sure.
Where communication is so important that you can overcome these obstacles by communicating and talking about it.
Right.
So I think that's engine truck. Yes, I'm a truckie, but I do understand that in the engine, there's no room for mistakes.
Well, you try to minimize them. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human, right? No one's perfect, and mistakes are going to be made. You know, I don't think anyone on this job. I mean, if you go to a job and you walk out of that building and say nailed it.
Yeah. But I think the engine has to be on point more than the truck because you can't short stretch.
No.
Right?
No.
You short stretch, we're in trouble.
100%.
Frozen hydrants. It's not really a mistake, but it's something an obstacle you have to overcome.
Correct.
Burst length, obstacle, overcome.
Overcoming it.
Communication and thinking. So again, we're so quick to dismiss the engine, and I think maybe we have to get back to our basics and understand that the engine isn't just for like the probies to come to cross the floor. That's why I love 48 because guys don't really cross the floor in your house. It's like you're either 48 engine or you're 56 drum. One house, but two very separate companies with a lot of pride.
100%. Like my two senior men right now, they've spent their entire career at 48. The number one guy has over 20. The number two guy is probably 18, and they've all been in 48.
Yeah.
And, and those two guys, I could honestly say, are probably the two best firemen I'm ever going to work with.
Yeah.
And that's not taking anything away from anyone I've worked with throughout my career. But it's the fact that they're still here. So they've had the most amount of time and impact on my career. You know, when I got there, I was fortunate enough that I still I was going to fires with those guys on the back step, Patty and Brian. You know what I mean? Now they're seated chauffeurs, and the new guys are fortunate enough that these guys are, I mean, stone cold steady when it comes to like first due chauffeurs.
Yeah.
These guys show no emotion, like nothing rattles them. I mean, they might say that they're shaking, but I tell you what, they don't show it. And by seeing that, and like those are the guys that I want to work under, and two, like I want to be that guy one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
And that's something special about a good engine is that when you see those senior guys still sticking around, because we know the engines get beat up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not an engine that's
Sure.
that's not getting crushed with runs.
Right.
And the ratio in most places, they're not very good. Pretty much,
Right.
I would say all places at this point as far as the engine, because the system's broken, and that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
But
yeah.
when you still see those senior guys getting on the rig and turning out every run, it's like it speaks volumes for the character, and you just know that trickles down. It's when you see
100%.
that senior guy that's maybe just doesn't have that edge anymore. They're
Okay.
burnt out.
Right.
They're a little over it all.
Right.
And that trickles down as well. But you
Right.
need those senior guys, man. I was UFO in a great place in an engine for a year and a half.
Okay.
And man, the senior guys, they would do anything for you, and that set the cadence of that engine company.
Sure.
Everything they did, it was an all-in opportunity.
Sure.
And they are very, very good at what they do.
Sure.
But cadence, and that's something that, again, engine and truck, like, and we can have this engine and truck conversation because obviously I'm a truckie and you're an engineman. But
Right.
when I was in that company as an engine officer, it took me a while to dial in, more than longer than I wanted or expected for me to figure it all out. Because again, we're so quick to dismiss the engine and
Right.
like, oh, I was a truck fireman for over 20 years. I can do this. And then you realize, whoa, like the engine officer is one of the hardest positions there is. And it's never spoken about. No one
Okay.
talks about the engine officer
Right.
and like start a line, water on the fire, like two things that pretty much the only thing you really say to fire. But the management of that line and the understaffed department, the participation of that line of getting water on the fire, it's critical, and it comes down to the officer to make that decision,
Right.
as well as the control firefighter in our job and the chauffeur to get water.
Sure.
Again, it's that teamwork, company integrity.
Right.
But
right.
when I was in the truck as a firefighter, I felt we set tempo, right?
Okay.
Where in an engine, it's more of a cadence, a march. The infantry of the fire service, always progressively moving forward. Like, it's all these things I say, but there's so much truth to it that I feel we have to remember that the engine truly is a cadence.
Mm-hmm.
The truck is a tempo. You kind of can dance your way into position. You can dance your way through mistakes and still get in and get the job done. Where the engine company, again, very small margin for mistakes. It's a cadence, it's a march, and ultimately water on the fire is our main objective. And it always comes down to that engine company from the officer all the way down to the backup junior guy, or all the way
Sure.
down to the control man to the chauffeur. So
Sure.
just tempo, cadence, and I think we can find that moment of zen, if you will. You find the rhythm of a fire, and that's when you watch good firehouses
Mhm.
or good companies
Right.
pull up, and it's like that poetry in motion. There's very little words spoken,
Mhm.
and there's nothing on the radio except for
Right.
start water,
Right.
water on the fire. You know, these are the things. There's no chaos, and that's the caliber of engine companies that I'm honored to work with and have worked in, and 48 obviously one of them. You know, so
Sure. It's a company thing, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I honestly think, you know, again, like I said before, not one man can do it. But the senior men set the tone.
Yeah.
You know, and you said about being burnt out and over it. You know, I could give you an example. This happened a couple months ago because he just came back from vacation. We were backing in from a run, and I was on the back step, and the chauffeur who was driving had less chauffeur time than me. And he had a chauffeur question. he asked me, and we're going back and forth, and then the boss gets involved. We're going back and forth, and it's 4 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock, and my senior man walks through the door. And we're by the division car, because you know where I work. We have the deputy. And I said, hey, can you ask a question? Walks over. What do you got? And I say ABC. The other guy says XYZ. The boss says 1, 2, 3. And he's like, well, what did you think about this? What about that? Have you ever seen this? What about that? And he's explaining everything to us.
Yeah. Without
even hesitation. He could have easily said, man, let me get changed first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Went upstairs, got changed, and without skipping a beat, got right back into it.
Yeah.
And was like, hey, when I was upstairs, I thought about this. Did you ever consider this? Again, that's the type of person that you want to work for and inspire to be.
And that's who you're gonna be. And that,
you know what I mean?
That
trickles down.
Yeah. I say it all the time. Good guys gravitate to great places. You're in a great place, and you're going to do great things for that place.
Right.
And people don't realize, maybe because of the grand scale of the FDNY, how easy it is to get lost in the mix.
Right.
It's almost too easy, because so many good guys get lost in the mix.
Right.
And they never get out.
Right.
So what I'm getting at is, if this resonates with you, what we're saying,
right.
Think about the future. No, change comes from within if you're in a place that's not doing the right thing, and then change yourself, and that ultimately change the files. Hopefully. Thank you, brother.
But that could have easily, and I can honestly say, if it was 2 a.m, that's the same scenario.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't have said, hey, can we revisit this at 8 a.m. when I get a cup of coffee in me?
Yeah.
Again.
I've seen that too.
That guy is setting the tone. You know what I mean? And if a guy with over 20 years is doing that,
so
you know what I mean? He's setting the standard.
Let's talk about the standard a bit.
Sure.
Or as far as the standards of the engine companies in New York City, and maybe that terminology. Like, I think this is something that it's not spoken about, and I want to get your take on it.
Okay.
Is engine company dialect or language, the way we speak, as far as back the line out, move the line, right? Two words that can be confused, but it's drastically changing tactics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you guys talk about the terminology? Like, so it's truckies don't talk about this.
Okay.
You should,
right.
I think maybe it's instilled in us maybe early on in probably school, but I think it gets lost in the mix, because I've had situations where I said move the line,
mm-hmm.
and they thought I said back the line.
Okay.
So move and back, 2 different words that are very close.
Correct.
But you have to know the dialect, right?
Correct.
So what is your take on that?
I mean, I don't want to. I hope this answers your question. We have very good fire officers in my place. Extremely knowledgeable, very good at what they do. I do feel, though, the engineman runs the nozzleman, I should say. The nozzleman runs the show.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You want to talk about terminology? I'll just ask you a question. I'll throw a scenario out. Start a line to the lobby. How do you feel about that?
I like it. In an H type.
You do?
If you're an H.
Okay.
If you're in an H and you pull up, you know there's a job.
Okay.
I like the transmission. Start a line to the lobby.
Okay.
But that's it. You can't go past that lobby. You cannot commit to a wing.
Oh, no. Oh,
but
correct.
I do like start a line to the lobby.
Okay.
But that said, if people we know have a job, I expect that nozzleman to already start that line.
Okay.
That's my take on it. If I'm in a spot as an engine officer,
right,
with my guys,
right,
I pull up and we know we have a job. People are coming out of the buildings,
right,
or down the stairs into the lobby.
Right.
I would think that the nozzleman should get that line and start it to the lobby and wait to say A wing, B wing.
Okay.
And then go.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Agree or no? Honest.
Yes and no, and I'll just expand the scenario. Like, the Grand Concourse, you have those huge H-type multiple dwellings. You pull up, you have a job. third due engine, and, Mike, start a line to the lobby. All right. Am I going to pull a line off the rig and start a line to the lobby knowing I got to go to the sixth floor of the H-type? Yeah. But when the fourth due engine gets there, and then the fourth due engine could assist. And that's going to, if everyone gets a fold or a line, it's going to make that advancement of that hose line to the top floor that much quicker.
So you think that by standing by on the back step, arm in the horseshoe, nozzle in your hand, like you should be sizing up the building, you're going to wait for the officer to start a line, right? Are you going to start then, or are you going to say, all right, boss, 1 second, we're waiting for the second?
No, I think it's all, I would say it's decision-based, but me personally, I really want to know where I'm going before the line comes off. And like I said, but by waiting for the additional fourth due engine, they're going to assist in the stretch, and it's a beautiful day today, but it's in the middle of July. You stretch a line to the lobby, now you're standing there waiting.
And you bring up a great point, because a couple buildings come into mind where you pull up to the front, especially in the concourse, you pull up to the front, here's the lobby. But if you didn't pay attention to SIDS, and now the fire department may change a little bit, the best move is to go down the side street, and there's another access, another stairwell, another wing,
But
especially those big concourses. That's knowing your area.
That's knowing your area, knowing your buildings. You know what I mean?
I think that's a good conversation point where I've been on both scenarios. I've had the nozzle and was told to start a line to the lobby.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also had the nozzle and started a line to the lobby and waited.
Right.
Afterwards, honestly, it was so long ago, I don't remember if we talked about it.
Right. But now, start a line, how many times have you gone to a job where they say, and I'm talking the second line here, start a line to the lobby, and that line never gets used?
From the first due engine.
From the third due. The second line. Yeah, start a line to the lobby, and that line never gets moved past the lobby,
I think that
flowed water in and operated.
So I think we have to get away from this, especially in our job. That second line needs to be stretched and charged every fire, because lithium-ion batteries are changing the game.
Okay.
I think we've kind of gotten away from not necessarily stretching the backup line, but charging it.
Right.
I think now lithium-ion battery fire is not necessarily restarting the fire, but now that fire can thermally load an e-bike, a hoverboard, a scooter in that hallway of the apartment.
Right.
Now the company is operating. It fails.
Right.
Burns the line through.
Right.
If that line's not stretched and charged, ready to go to work, then we're in trouble.
I see your point.
So
I see your point.
I think that it's something that I think it's probably borough-based if you're stretching a line and charging it.
Okay.
Where I work right now, they're stretching that line every single time, not necessarily charging it.
Right.
But the deputy wants it off the rig and stretched in position every single time, even if it's a couch on fire. They want that line stretched.
Okay.
See the way I looked at it when I was in the engine as the officer? Great. It's a drill if we don't use it.
Okay.
But
I
think we have to get over that and get ready to go to work with enough hose, obviously, to get to the floor above. But we can't dismiss attacking the fire floor now, because that device might fail.
Right. Okay.
Different way of looking at things, maybe.
Sure. I mean, you could look at things. Yeah.
I'll take it one step further. I think we have to get to a point where we have to have first line stretch, fire department, second line stretch, back up the first line. We don't need that. Where do we go with it?
What type of?
H-type.
H-type?
You bring it to the floor above, right? Yeah, we got extension. Bring the line up here.
It's going to back up the first line until you deem it necessary to move it. And then go
I almost think that we need to keep that there committed. Stretch the third line to the floor above. Or if it's that dire, which is usually on the floor above in an H-type, but to move that line in position and back up that line. But having that line charged and ready, I think, is going to be an important move going forward.
Now you're talking like a multiple alarm. You're going to need.
Yeah, well, if you noticed recently, we're getting one-on-one.
They're getting one-on-one off the bat.
Yeah, for the overhaul.
For the overhaul,
of lithium-ion battery.
Correct.
So I think we need to go 5 engines. And this is totally FDNY stuff, because people are like, 5 engines? We don't have 5 engines in our city.
We kill it with manpower.
Yeah, but I think we need that lithium-ion battery engine company where it's probably reactive rather than proactive. But if we start thinking proactive, maybe eventually it'll become proactive.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
Thinking a little too far into it, maybe. But I just had this conversation yesterday with a friend who just, I think that we have to pivot. We haven't pivoted yet.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know what we're waiting for. But something's got to change, because every fire we go into is lithium-ion batteries. And it's not necessarily starting the fire.
But it will be involved in it?
Involved.
Yeah, okay.
Either the floor above.
Right.
From thermal loading.
Yeah.
or direct impingement on the fire floor or thermal loading on the fire floor. There's so many variables that I was talking about.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it comes back to this isn't going to be an engine problem, an engine-based, not problem, but an engine-based solution if we can figure it out. But it's going to come with patience. You're going to have to be able to be like, all right, I'm the battery engine. This sucks, but like when it fails, you save the day. You know?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
So let's transfer that into staffing now. We're talking about 5 engines for a routine fire, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And people always want to beat up on the FDNY as far as staffing, right?
Right.
Oh, a million guys show up for a fire. Well, you're right. But I think that when you say that, people aren't looking at the big picture.
Uh-huh.
So let's talk about the Grand Concourse.
Sure.
Top floor fire. What's the average length?
I mean, you're talking, it could easily be over 10. Easy.
10, 16 sometimes. I've had one that was 18.
Yeah.
So
I'm lowballing it.
yes. So think about 4 firefighters. You add the second engine. You have 8 firefighters.
Right.
Stretching up to 16 to 20 lengths at a fire.
Mm-hmm.
It all equals out in the end, where
Correct.
you have a private dwelling with 3 guys stretching it, maybe 2.
Right.
It's all the same.
Right.
One guy puts the fire out, it's a nozzleman. But the steps to get there is the manpower.
Correct.
And it's the terrain of the buildings you fight fire in.
Correct.
So I think that's where we get lost. Oh, FDNY to kill it with manpower. Not really, because
You're
I've
gonna
been to
need it.
fires where there's been a delay getting water in the fire because the stretch is so long we don't have enough manpower.
Right.
And people are probably listening like, oh, FDNY don't have enough manpower. Well, I want to see any of those companies come to the Grand Concourse and stretch 20 lengths to a fire, possibly.
Right.
You know, it takes manpower. Yes, we have it, but that's why we have it.
Right.
You know, if you go to Brooklyn and Queens, they're doing it with 3 guys. Boom, like that.
Right.
It's all relevant to where you work. You know?
Sure. Sure.
So that's something that I think that gets kind of beat up in the fire service, or at least from city to city, region to region, is staffing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about low staffing departments?
Mm-hmm.
Now that officer not being so into supervising the stretch, but
Right.
being a part of the stretch.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I have a best friend who's a captain in a city in Connecticut, and I break his chops. I'm like all the time. I'm like, you're just a pencil and a flashlight, man. No disrespect, but yeah, you're just a pencil and a flashlight. No. I have to hump hose. I got to stretch this and the other thing. You know, I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever. You know, but like you said, it's terrain. Where he is, it's they don't have the buildings, they don't have the occupancies we do, you know. But again, it's their policies, procedures, their SOPs. They fit their environment on how they handle things.
I kind of think that if
You know,
our bosses and our job were more hands-on, I would have studied years ago. I never wanted to put the tools down.
okay,
I don't want to be a supervisor. I want to stretch the line. I want to pull the ceiling. I want to force the door. I
Sure.
think that holds a lot of firefighters back from getting onto the next step of promotion, because
right,
they don't want to supervise. They don't want to babysit. They want to
Right.
do the work. I always
Right.
want to do the work, and I think that it's not a detriment in our job. We're very grateful to have that.
sure,
But there's so many times where I'm just like,
why did
I even want to overhaul the ceiling. So, I want to pull the ceiling so bad, you know. I guess eventually I'll outgrow that. I don't know,
Right,
but
yeah. I'm sure, because you know, like I said, our fire officers are tremendous, man, and I mean, part of their job too is, you know, clearly all my officers have more time than I do.
Yeah.
So they're a wealth of knowledge. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's a huge aspect of being a fire officer. You know what I mean? One in particular, you know, my senior lieutenant right now, you know, he's going to be getting promoted to captain. He's an amazing fire officer, and he came from a great place, you know, engine and truck, and then I really don't think he wanted an engine, and then once he came to us UFO, he was all in.
yeah,
And now he's going to be a tremendous loss when he gets promoted to captain, but wherever he goes, like, he will be a huge asset to whatever. He'll land on his feet because, you know, he's a awesome guy. He's got decent amount of time on, and he's very, very knowledgeable. And
I'm curious if 48 engine made him an engineman for life now.
you know what? Next time I see him, I'll ask him. Because he's an amazing engine officer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I said, I think that is a huge part of being an officer is the experience, the knowledge, and the guidance that you have over, your guys, your new guys. Because ultimately, it's your responsibility to make sure I go home.
That's it, and I think
that's heavy right there.
It is,
You know
and
what I mean?
especially in the engine company. Now, the truck company, the officer is more of a hands-on officer. We're searching,
Sure.
right? I find the fire. I'm going to close the door. I'm going to isolate it. I'm going to do all these things. We're part of the team,
Right.
the inside team, more or less. The officer, the forcible entry team,
Right.
With the engine company, though, the officer. This is what I was saying. It was very, very. I think it's a very underrated position as far as what people think that is the stress level maybe, but
Right.
it's you don't communicate much because the guys are doing everything right. You
Right.
have to tell them where to stretch, what wing if it's a big building,
Right.
Right. Call for water, and give the report for water on the fire. Now, this is something I want to talk to you about: water on the fire. Do you believe that the only person on the fire ground should be the engine company officer that says we have water on the fire, or do you feel that someone else can give that transmission?
I think the engine officer.
Engine officer, right?
Yeah. And I feel that, in my opinion, this is solely my opinion here, I feel that he should be the only one calling to charge a line.
Yes.
I've been at jobs where, and it's no disrespect to anyone, but other higher ranking officers are calling to have lines charged.
Really?
Yeah. And, hey man, you're not up there because I can visually see you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, it's not a perfect world. We're all human. We make mistakes, but yeah, if you're in there, if you're in the apartment and you have water flowing and you have eyes on it, yeah, I feel it should come from the engine officer.
Yeah. And so I think this is something that needs to be spoke about and drilled into guys more often than not, is that nobody else gives that transmission, because if it's a false transmission where we can knock down fire but not have the seat of the fire, not have water on the seat of the fire, right? We can knock down fire to make them
Sure.
right? That could be mistaken for water on the fire when it's water on fire, but not on the fire.
Correct.
Right? And this is the terminology I go back to, that dialect where,
Yeah.
especially over the department or the handy-talkie with all the bullshit on the radio, it can get lost.
Right.
So my advice to any young chief out there who maybe just like the internal clock's ticking, like if you don't get it from the engine officer, don't prompt someone else for an answer, because they're going to give it to you because they feel pressured to give you some kind of answer.
Okay.
They might give you the wrong one. If you
Right.
give the wrong one, next thing you know, take the windows and then the place lights up.
Right.
Maybe we don't have,
Right.
we don't have water on the fire
Right.
rather than water on fire.
Right. Right.
So you never give that transmission of water on fire. It's water on the fire. Two
Right.
very different, because now from the truck standpoint, especially as a truck officer, floor above, especially on
Very
a
dangerous
cold,
place.
cold night, right?
Yep.
Frozen hydrants, burst lines, all these crazy things happening, like really cold, windy night, whatever it may be. Once I hear that, it's like that stress level comes way down.
Right.
So I think that the engine company officer, and again, what we're getting away from, or we don't really understand, dismissing the engine, is that he's the general.
Mhm.
He's the general of the fire ground.
Right. Sure.
We have fire sector chiefs. I get it.
Above my pay grade.
Yeah, we have all these guys now,
Above my pay grade.
and I'm just happy we have the staffing to do that. But
Right.
sometimes it's like, don't overstep what the engine company officer is. He's the
Sure.
general.
Right.
He's running the show.
Right.
You have the truck. He's more the recon guy. He's going to go find the fire. All right, we got it here. But that engine company officer is the fucking general of the fire floor.
Sure.
The infantry of the fire service. Always progressive, moving forward. And I'll say it over and over, but
Mhm.
I think there's so much to that. I don't know.
Right.
I just want to get your take on that terminology, because in the truck has terminology, but again, we can dance around mistakes. At the engine, we need to dial in exactly what we're talking about and what it means.
Mhm.
Going back to move the line or back the line.
Mhm.
What's your take on that? Do you guys have any kind of things you talk about with that, or are you drilling that at all?
Not really. As far as backing out, because we backed out the other day at a job. It was just way too far in advance on arrival.
Is there
But
3 floors of fire?
yeah,
I saw
the
it.
one
Yeah.
on Villa. How do you back a line out? You know, because I've seen it where guys just stand up and,
Funny, right?
you know what I mean? That can't do that, man.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I'm not here to knock on anybody, but there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things, and to back a line out, you have to continue to
Operate.
operate.
That's it.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
if you don't, you could put guys in a bad spot.
Yeah.
You
So what I'm getting at is if I tell you to move the line, listen, guys, we're going to move the line from here. We're going to go over there.
That's different.
We're just going to move the line. You
Yeah.
can shut it down. We're going to bring it over. We're going to open it up over here.
That's different.
How I say we're going to back the line out, that means shit's going really bad.
Correct.
And we're not leaving. But
Correct.
we're going to open this line and we're going to operate the nozzle backwards almost.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So that's backing the line out.
Right.
And I think that needs to be clarified on all jobs because you can go from here to Philly to Boston, Chicago, and every suburb in between.
Mhm.
No one's on the same page with the vocabulary in the fire service. And
Right.
I get that. It's very regional. But I think that's something that maybe should be kind of a hard, fastened terminology of back the line, move the line, water on the fire, all these things that are, again, it comes down to the general running the show.
Mhm.
And when you trump the general,
Right.
we're in trouble.
We're in trouble.
Because now we're calling audibles
Right. Right. Sure.
without going through the general. And this is why the engine company officer, again, gets overlooked. But I think that is one of the most noble and strongest positions on the fire ground.
Right.
And we have to remember that. We have to
Sure.
respect that.
Sure. Sure. Again, though,
So what else? What else about engine you got for me? Give me something that separates your company from every other company. Not beating up companies, but something
No.
where you're like, you know what? Fuck yeah.
Honestly, I think it's pride. It's pride. Knowing who came before you and what they did and why they did it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, one of 23 to have that front piece out of what, 15,000,
Yeah.
10,000.
Yeah.
That's something. And I think the groundwork that those guys laid and is continuing to be laid, and the traditions that they've set forth that are continuing. I mean, I can only speak for, where I come from, but the place you work in and the place you came from, I'm sure they have traditions and stuff that they continue. But for me, I think, me personally, it's a pride thing. I'm to work where I work. Like, if the hose bed ain't right,
Yep.
we're redoing it.
I just wrote down 4 things when you said pride, and the answer comes right to my mind. First thing, hose bed.
Hose bed,
Got to be packed.
100%.
Even if it's a cold, bitter night, all right, get the frozen hose on the bed. When we get back, before anyone's going up to the rack, this is packed. Packed for performance.
Right.
For a 48 engine.
Yeah.
It's important you have that.
100%.
Uh,
100%.
The back step, every run, in class 3, which is a fire alarm,
Sure.
to a gas leak, to smoke, whatever it may be, that nozzle man should be on that back step, arm through the horseshoe, hand on the nozzle, sizing up that building as if it was a fire.
Mhm.
We've gotten away from that in our job,
Right.
and I see it all the time.
Sure.
Guys don't want to put their gear on half the time because it's not a fire,
Right.
So we have to remember that we have to go through the motions because consistency equals professionalism. Everything we do, especially in the engine company, we have to be ready to go to war.
Mhm.
Because when they say start a line, there's no room to get dressed.
Right.
Again, truck, we can dance around because I'll be delayed to the rear because I have to put my pants on. No
Right.
one's going to know about that.
Right.
However, in the engine
Right.
company, when the officer says start a line,
Right.
there's no time to fuck around.
Right. Yeah.
Back step, standpipe. You have a standpipe job.
Right.
Someone comes relieve your control man. What do you say?
Relieves your control, man?
Yeah,
No.
you stay.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So some places you move up and say, I got you, bro. Go
Really?
have some fun.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah.
Like what? Really?
Oh yeah. Not
Nah.
supposed to do that,
No,
but
no.
good places don't let that happen.
Wow. Again, like I said, I'm
You're
institutional.
spoiled, man. You're
I'm
spoiled.
institutional.
There's a lot going on out there, man.
I'm institutionalized. Yeah. Okay.
And
yeah. No.
another one.
Sure.
Take a hydrant every run.
Oh,
Get
man.
out and check it.
That's huge for us.
Every run.
Our seated chauffeurs, man. They, again, phenomenal at what they do.
Yeah.
They, you got to know 6 ways to Sunday how to get to a box and then where the hydrant is. All right, we got beat in. Now I'm going to go 1 block west, 1 block over, and I'm going to back in.
Yeah.
I'm going to put the hose bed to the building. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like that. Impressive is the word I would use for.
I used to run in with you guys. I mean, it wasn't often, but we ran in with you enough
Yeah.
where I knew the
Sure.
caliber of guys you were dealing with.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's been passed down.
Yeah.
Over time, over years, how to operate as a seated chauffeur. I'm not a seated chauffeur, but I've been a chauffeur for 5 years, and that's how they broke me in.
And this is something what you just said is
Sure.
like, wait for this truck to go by.
Mhm.
Nobody really wants to drive unless you got time, right?
Uh-huh.
Nobody really wants the control or the door when we had it because you want the nozzle, but you can't always have the nozzle.
Correct.
So even in the truck, if you get the roof and you're like, ugh, fucking roof.
Mhm.
Like, whatever position you have, first of all, it's an honor to have the position in the New York City Fire Department.
100%.
It's an incredible honor.
Sure.
But don't dismiss that position because you have the roof, not the irons, or you have the control, not the nozzle. Like,
Right.
take that moment to be like completely into that position and study it and read up on it and think about every run you go on. What am I doing?
Right.
Especially the control guy, right? So let's talk about the control guy.
Okay.
For us, the control guy is the guy who estimates the stretch because we don't use
Sure.
pre-connects. So with that said, we have they call it a dead bed. Is that what it is, really?
A dead load.
A dead load, yeah.
Dead load.
So dead load meaning that we stretch a line, we have enough line, we break the
Break
line,
it.
and we connect it to the
Right.
rig, right?
Okay.
That control guy estimates the stretch.
Okay.
When I always had that control guy, I took tremendous pride to be one of the. I used to race the officers getting in,
Mhm.
but to the lobby,
Oh yeah, you're the first one at the door.
yeah, and then right over the radio, especially if it's a phone alarm for smoke or whatever else,
Right.
come in into the left, into the right,
Right.
and that just straight up like.
Okay.
I'm not saying like engine 1 control the engine 1 nozzle. We're going into the left. No, I'm
Right.
just going right in and say into the left.
Okay.
Right. So now the nozzle man knows. Okay, now let me size up this wing. That's where we're going. Now he starts thinking. Right, counting
Sure.
floors. So it's like, I think that's so important. I think again maybe we're getting away from that. I don't want to say we're getting away from that. I just don't see it as often
Really?
as I used to. Maybe.
Okay.
And that because I don't really work in a big H area anymore.
Okay.
That's an H type thing.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know, but is that happening by you?
No, like that's standard.
Standard, right?
Like,
Yeah.
That's standard for us. You just said how you do it. I do it a little bit differently. I try to be the first one to the door. Go in, get a layout of the lobby. On my way in, I'm counting my steps. On my way out, I'm counting my steps.
Yes.
I'll hang out to see where the truck and my officer go. And then when I get out, I'll relay that to my nozzleman. I mean, like you say it over the radio, I'm just relaying it face to face. That would be the only difference between you and I, how like you operate it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I love that what you
Yeah,
just said.
I would do it face to face. I would,
Yeah.
say, hey, Tommy, they went in, the stairwell's on the left. No well.
I think if you take anything away from this conversation and you're on our job, counting the steps, home run.
Well, yeah. So
What a great tip.
for me, I know that 22 steps is 50 feet. So break it down, simple math.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what separates
If
you
if-
from other people.
if
I'm telling you.
But again, I didn't create that. That's how I was brought up.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything I do, I didn't create anything.
See,
this is
This is the problem with this not a problem. It's a great conversation, but I think when your water's right there, right if
okay.
you want it.
All right, thank-
you've forgotten half the stuff that people will never know. And that's from the guys passing that on to you, right? So what you said that in matter of fact. Yeah, 22 steps is 50 feet.
Right.
Like, that's incredible.
Okay.
That's an incredible tip.
Right. That's why, if you look at our apparatus floor, from the door, you'll see a white line on the ground to the bay door. That's 50 feet. So on day one, walk from here to the door. That's 50 feet. So when you have control, and again, it gives you something to do too, to focus on.
Yeah.
Like all hell could be breaking loose. But let me just focus on this right now. And let me calm myself down. I'm going to walk in, and then I'm going to do it on the way out to make sure I'm right. Because, like you said earlier on, short stretching is a no-no. It can't happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it gives you something to slow it down, focus, 1, 2, and then on the way out.
And the fact that you guys have that on the apparatus floor, how many times do you like come back from a run and just count it out for the hell of it?
Right.
Right? Especially
Yeah.
the first couple of years, you're probably like
Right.
1, 2, you count it off as you're going. You're like,
Right.
yep, 22, there it is
And
again.
I only know what the guys taught me. So just the unluckiness of retirements and promotions, the turnover in the company was extremely fast. You know, you got the number one guy, the number two guy, me and the guy who graduated together and went to the engine. There's a guy with more house time than me, but I have more company time than him, and he's getting promoted the next go around too. So, but I'm not a senior guy. I don't have time on this job. But what I do have is all the knowledge and experience
Yeah.
that those guys showed me.
Well,
And
this
that's
is
what I know.
Yeah, and you have to remember, like, and this is like the ongoing thing, like time on the job is not really about years. It's pretty much the caliber of guys you work with and the character you have to adapt to that
Sure.
and absorb it all.
Sure.
That gives you time on the job, even though it's not time in,
Right.
in our sense of like
Sure.
where your picture is on the wall.
Right.
But when you communicate with the next generation coming in, it's like you truly are the senior guy because you have the answers,
Mhm.
right? And you have what these guys are looking for. And again, like all the engines, like the 1-8 and the 1-9 battalion, in my opinion. I mean, that's where I'm from. That's where you
Yeah,
are. Like
yeah.
some of the best engines in the entire world,
Heavy hitters.
and tremendous amount of workload,
Right.
long stretches.
Mhm.
Fires always go out. So it's
100%.
like, as a truckie, sitting back and just knowing this is something from a truck mindset is like, when you go to the floor above, there wasn't an engine I ran in with that I didn't ever think twice about getting water on that fire, you know?
Right.
Because
So-
you know they're going to stretch, right?
Right.
They're going to call for water.
Right.
And if there is a problem, they're going to overcome it.
Right.
So good trucks come
I
from
was-
great engines.
I was just going to say, so you know where I work.
Yeah.
So you know the truck that's in my firehouse?
Yeah.
They're studs. Some of them went there straight out of progress school. Some of them crossed the floor. Some of them transferred in. There's no weak link there.
No.
Doesn't matter who's on that riding list. What makes an aggressive truck company?
Good engine.
Good engine. It goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know when I walk into work and I look at their riding list, doesn't matter who's on that riding list. The door is getting forced. The OV's making the rear, giving his report. Roofman's making it. There's no question.
I don't think you understand how lucky you are
And
to have that.
they know that when it's on, and you know we got reports of people trapped and they got to go 3 rooms deep. They're gonna make the move because they know.
Yeah.
You know, they got an aggressive, squared away engine that's gonna make that push. And like you said, you know, that entire area. You know, I'm very fortunate enough I landed on my feet where I did, and that entire area, you said it, not me, but that entire area, it's all I know. I'm institutionalized, but surrounded by aces.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very fortunate enough of the neighboring companies that I run in with and get detailed to, you know, they're aces.
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of like interchangeable players for the most part between all those engine companies.
Right.
It comes down to just some separate core values that each place is a little different in.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But
and that's what
overall,
sets
they're
them
all
apart.
incredible engine companies.
Yeah. And
Which,
you know,
again, if you look at the trucks in the areas, they're all the best trucks in the job, in my opinion, because of the engine companies. You know what I mean? And because you can really, really push the limits. especially, and this is something for guys on our job that might be listening, when you come to work, check the riding list of the surrounding engine companies and just size up. Probably on the nozzle, or I got the 20-year kind of nozzle tonight,
Right.
because you're going to the floor above.
Right.
And they're going to be the ones that put water on the fire.
Right.
But that said, either if it's the Proby or the 20-year guy, it's getting done.
Right.
But you might just want to know.
Right.
You
Sure.
know?
I do that.
Yeah.
I do that when I drive.
Yeah.
I do that when I drive. Because I want to know who could be helping me and who I could be helping. You know what I mean? If I run into a problem. You know what I mean?
So what else do you have that I'm blown away by the 22? I've never heard that. The 22 steps for
Well,
life.
so again, you know, I only know what was taught to me, and you mentioned the control position. The control position, you know, where I work is you know, you're the catcher that caught the no-hitter. You know what I mean? No one knows your name.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But dude, you were there, and you're pretty effing important. You know what I mean? We handle that position a little bit differently, where we introduce being a chauffeur to our young guys.
Yeah.
Like, you're the control guy. You're not going to have the control for a while. You're definitely not going to be a chauffeur for years. But when I'm driving and I need help, who better to help me than the guy I'm signed with?
Yeah.
So, dude, you're going to know how to put the rig in pumps. If I say, what does blue mean to you, that you know it's on the you know what's on the officer side, you know the ins and outs of being a bare bones chauffeur.
And I think that what you're saying right there, and you probably don't realize you said it, but I know 100% you agree with me, is that we can't give details to control. Worst
No.
case scenario, yes, it happens. Of course it happens.
Right.
But don't take the backup over the control because you want to be closer to the fire. Yes, you're the catcher that caught the no-hitter,
You're the catcher.
but then own it because it's your company.
Right.
And I can always look on the riding
that's a
list and
pride thing,
see.
too.
Yeah, I go through the riding lists and I'll look over the city and I'd be like, boom, 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 truck detail under control. Of course, I think to myself, that's fucked up. But then you take another breath and you're like, you know what? I don't know what cards were dealt that night.
Right.
But
Sure.
from the outside looking in, I really believe that you should have at least an engine guy on control,
Right.
and an assigned engine guy.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
Now again, the variables are always there.
Sure.
Boys night out,
Right.
softball, this. I mean, we know our job. We
Absolutely,
know how it
yeah.
works. But especially it could be any day of the week. But you get a cold winter night or like windy night or just something where the odds are already against us.
Right.
Let's dial that position in. You know.
Sure.
Even take a guy from the truck that's from that firehouse, squared away, maybe cross the floor
Right.
at one point and say, "Hey, bro, you mind taking the control tonight?" No.
Sure.
I think the control and the roof, the two least most desirable positions on the fire ground,
Very important.
are the most important.
Right.
People don't want them because it's not like you're not closer to the fire, you know?
No.
And you
No.
could say all day long, I'd rather have the roof than the OV, I'd rather have this and that. I get it. We all have our preference, but
Right.
the majority speaks.
Right.
You'd rather have the irons than the roof.
Sure.
You'd rather have the nozzle than the
Right.
control.
But
right?
that's
come on.
why, I'm speaking me personally right now. Like, with the new guy in my groups, when we drill, I tend to make it a control based drill.
Yeah.
And
great.
again, it's how I was broken in.
Mhm.
With the guys who broke me in. The control position, you got to be thinking. You have to think. You have to be able to call an audible. And like I said, when your chauffeur is struggling or has a problem, well, you can't leave the back step until water is in that line. You can't go anywhere. So why not know his job? Teach him his job. You know what I mean? Again, we set our rig up differently than other rigs. There's rhyme or reason to why we have our rigs set up. You know what I mean? The trough on the chauffeur side is identical to the trough on the officer side. That way you could operate on either side of the rig. That way, when shit's hitting the fan, you're not rummaging through something and delaying water even more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But our new guys are, at least I try to introduce them to the control position and also a little bit of the chauffeur aspect sooner rather than later, because you have to be able to think. You have to be able to be, like I said, that piece of advice that guy gave me, you have to be able to be good at solving problems. And you know what I mean? And again, like I said, who better I'd rather trust than a guy who's in my company. You know, I know who he is. I know who broke him in. He knows how we operate. He's here to help me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not relying on another company. You know what I mean? And like you said, every company around where I work they're heavy hitters. You know what I mean? They're aces. But with that, you know the area that I'm in, these engines, at least, you know, are 6,500, 7,000 runs. So, you know, just because you're, you know, first due, you know, on the ticket, your second due
Yeah.
might be the 1075 engine because the second and the third are on EMS boxes or
Yeah.
whatever, you know. Engines, like you said earlier, are getting crushed, man. You know, so that's even a further delay, you know.
They are getting crushed, and unfortunately, I see guys bailing out of engines, and I wish guys would stay in
Oh,
engines
you got to
longer.
embrace that, man. There's no better feeling, man,
Oh,
than waking up in the morning, pouring a cup of coffee after 8 or 9 after midnight, man, and just
you know where I work.
oh man,
We're not taking nights off on that. You know that engine work, but
yeah, and you know,
but
makes
I
for
think
good
that
kitchen talk in the morning.
yes, it does. But this is the thing. When you work in a busy place, and we both work in busy places, and we are not talking fire duty, and that's the same conversation. But let's
Sure.
talk about the runs.
Sure.
There's something about that camaraderie of getting your ass kicked and just that coffee in the morning. You know, it's just
you
like
could ask anyone I work with. I fully embrace it.
yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
If you don't, you're gonna lose.
Right.
And then go find a different place to work in, and then
Yeah.
when you go to a fire, it's gonna suck.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have any fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what are we just talking about? Runs. So something escaped my mind just now. I want to talk about. What were we talking before that?
Getting crushed.
Crushed. Oh, spending time in the engine and not bailing out of the engine so
Okay.
quick. So guys
Yeah,
are so quick to come in the engine and they cross the floor in like a year, 2, 3, 4, whatever.
Sure.
Like, I started an engine.
Mhm.
I know the engine's a job.
Sure.
I fell in love with the truck.
Sure.
It just,
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
Right.
it goes both ways.
Sure.
And honestly, I think that if there was probably more opportunities to have a nozzle at a fire, I probably would have stayed a little bit longer. But I got tired of going to fires and like be the third due engine and doing nothing and seeing the second due truck go to work. And that's what kind of pushed me
Yeah,
to truck
but-
quicker, you know? And that's honest. I'm being honest with that. But
It's the individual's perspective. You know, like where I am, you know, the truck where I'm at, they catch a lot of good second due work, a lot of floor above work, which
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you is a dangerous place to be.
that's the job. It's for the truck.
You know what I
that's the
mean?
job,
Which
you know, like-
so if they're doing second, then that makes us second due. You know what I mean? Do you, at the end of the day, you really want to be a second due engine? No, but it's perspective.
yeah, you're right.
So, and again, no one's perfect, and I'm not bashing anyone. I'm not knocking anyone. The main, as far as I'm concerned, the main purpose of a second due engine is to stop that snowball from forming and rolling down that
Yeah.
hill. We're there to pick up the pieces, and I'm okay with that, man.
As a second
You know what
due
I mean?
engine officer,
I'm okay with that. You know, yeah.
Yeah.
Do I want to put fires out? Sure, but is that realistic?
yeah.
No, it's not.
No.
You're not. That's not realistic.
I know my first
know what I
couple
mean?
fires as a second due engine officer, I was like, this sucks. Because you're the water resource, and if the companies are all good, you have nothing to do.
Right.
But
Right.
when that curveball comes, which I had one where I was a
That's where you
second
make
due,
your money.
I truly became the water resource manager.
And
I was like, whoa, hold
That's
on,
where
I
you
wasn't
earn your
ready
pay.
for this. Yeah,
That's where you
so-
earn your pay.
again, going back to that engine officer gets overlooked many times. It's like the general, or like even the second due is like the assistant to the general. All right, boss, I got you coming. You know, like, and it's just. But circling back to the amount of time you should stay in the engine, I think that the longer you stay in the engine, with aspirations of maybe crossing the floor and become a truck firefighter, you're going to be that much better of a truck firefighter because of timing, right? And I always talk about tempo and cadence and rhythm, right? How they all come together.
Mm-hmm.
That ultimately comes from understanding, though, like, how long does it take, roughly, you tell me,
Sure.
to stretch top floor fire and maybe the hydrant is not close,
Okay.
at least 2 lengths away, right?
Okay.
That takes a long time to
gonna
get
take a
that
while.
line into
It's
position.
going to take a while.
But how long do you think? Roughly, throw it out there. Not a minute. We're not running on the fire
No,
ground. Like
no.
some people, oh, we run. That's not the major leagues.
Right.
I'll say it, not the major leagues. We're not
Sure.
running.
Right.
For one, you're not running with a 20 length stretch. You're not running with a 10 length stretch.
No.
But it takes a long time.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
How long do you think?
Well, I was going to say over a minute.
Oh, well over a minute.
Well over a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe 4 minutes.
Right.
Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
So now you've done that a few times, right?
Sure.
Now you're the first 2 can man. Right?
Right.
And you're holding back fire.
Sure.
And you know that line's coming, but you don't know when it's coming because you never did it because you got assigned to the truck at a probie school and you went right to the can.
Mhm.
How are you really going to gauge the conditions of what you're doing in relation to when that line's coming? And I think that's important.
I see the angle you're
It's
trying
all
to
about
make.
internal clocks, right? So
Yeah,
if you have the
I
can, you're
see.
holding fire back.
Right.
In your back of your mind, click, 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 click. Where the fuck is that line?
Right,
You know?
yeah.
All right. If you hear star water, you're like, they're right on target.
Right.
Or if they're not, then you can kind of recalculate, like, they should have called for water already. Hold on, let me
Right.
see what's going on. You know?
Right. Yeah.
That comes from doing it. You
Sure.
can't read that. You can't learn that from a textbook. You can't learn that in a seminar. That's something you just have to instinctually learn, that it becomes instinct when you're on the reverse position. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I do.
So I just think that if you're in the engine with aspirations of going to the truck, take the time to really focus on the timing of how long it takes to get things done on the engine.
Right.
Because they don't happen that quick.
Right.
You know?
No, I understand what you're saying. I do.
You notice, listen for 1070, which means that we have a water problem. We're not getting water.
Sure.
A lot of young truckies might dismiss that transmission. Oh, they'll figure it out. You know, because you were part of the engine.
Right.
Holy shit, let me dial this back. Where am I? Where's my second means of egress? These are all
Right.
the things that are so important that will keep you alive in the truck.
Sure.
That came from your time in the engine.
Sure. So are you saying every guy should go to an engine at a probie school?
I'm a firm believer in that. I'm not dismissing the guys that don't have that opportunity, and I think it is an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because you'll learn eventually by going to fires, but I
Sure.
think that you have a competitive advantage if you spent time in a good engine
Mhm.
with the morals of what you've taught your young guys,
Right.
and ultimately learning the timing.
Mhm.
Is everything we do on the fire ground comes down to timing. Time
Mhm.
is a tool.
Right.
If we learn to use time as a tool on the fire ground, it all works out. But you have to be able to manipulate time.
Sure.
Meaning, like, again, you got that can, you're holding it back.
Right.
Or you pass that can man to search the rear bedroom,
Right.
and you hear 1070, and you're like, holy fuck. I'm
in.
2 rooms past the fire.
I'm in too deep here.
Yeah, I'm in
Yeah.
too deep. Let me recalibrate what I'm doing.
Right.
So I do think that, yes, we should all go to engines. I went to an engine.
Mhm.
I loved my time in the engine.
Sure.
And as an officer, I went to an engine.
Mhm.
Loved my time as that.
Mhm.
Really, like, made me a fire officer, which I'm not really there yet, but I'm getting there. And I think
Sure.
that came from that time in the engine, like
Okay.
overcoming mistakes, learning communication.
Mhm.
I had to learn that in real time with, like, I got this job. No problem. I did 20 years in a busy place. I'm good, you know? And then you realize you're the officer, and then you have to overcome these mistakes and
Right.
manage that.
Right.
Very stressful and very hard to do if
Sure.
you didn't have any engine background. That's my take on it. What do you feel as far as?
Well, I mean, I work with guys who, have more time on the job than I do that went straight to trucks, and they're probably the best on the job.
Oh yeah.
They're,
I'm not saying discrediting
Nice.
anything. Yeah.
you know what
I
I mean?
just
They're
think that- yeah.
they're very good at what they do. They're very knowledgeable at what they do. Do I feel that you would have an advantage if you went to an engine out of probie school and went to a truck? Is there truth to that? Maybe, but at the same time, I feel that it comes down to the individual.
Yeah.
How much is that individual going to put into his career and reputation?
I just want to clarify. I'm not
Sure.
saying that if you don't go to an engine, a guy that went to an engine is a better fireman. I'm not saying that by
No,
any means.
right,
I'm just
no.
saying I think you have a competitive advantage right out of the gate
Right.
when you go to that truck.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I don't know, man. there is truth to what you're saying. I do feel the same way there.
And I think that a lot of the guys that didn't go to engines, if you had an honest conversation,
Sure.
most of them would probably say, you know what, I wouldn't mind doing a couple years in the engine.
Right.
I mean, keeps you real, keeps you honest,
Right.
right?
For sure. I feel it's extremely hard to be good at. Engine
is.
work is very hard to
Yes.
be good at. You know what I mean?
There's a lot
There's a lot.
of like good engines out there, but very little great.
Right. Yeah.
engines.
Who wants to be a run of the mill?
Yeah.
Not me. You know what I mean?
And I think that speaks volumes of where we are today in the fire service nationwide, where it's like, I know a lot of departments focus on EMS
Mhm.
and their paramedics.
Okay.
And they dismiss the firefighting because they're not doing the work we're doing. And that's understandable. I mean,
Right.
you work in a beautiful town and wherever it is in the country, like, yes, they have firefighters and they're professional firefighters, but they're focusing on being paramedics. And it's not the firefighters, it's the administrative, usually, the city, the town you work in. They push paramedic to you.
Right.
That's the job. And firefighting gets dismissed. And I think that it all comes back to understanding that when we do go to a fire, that's where we really earn our money. Doesn't matter where you work. I mean, it could be the South
No one
Bronx,
else is coming.
or it could- yeah.
But
Yeah.
no one else is coming.
Yeah.
You know?
So give me, before we wrap up, give me like 3 like training tips. I know you're a big training guy. You're into the job. What are 3 things that like, you're like, you know what, that's a good drill. I want to work on that. Or 3 things that you've done. Or something just like guys can really just take them and just run with. When, you know, when they listen to this, they can bring it back to their firehouse.
All right. Drill wise, I'll repeat like I said before. Communicate, man. Just
Yeah.
if you're an engine guy, because that's what I know. I think I'm squared away with it. I think I'm good at what I do. To get an honest assessment, you would have to ask the guys I work with. But to me, I feel that piece of advice that guy gave me a couple years ago was the best piece, and I'll say that. Become a good problem solver and communicator.
I love that. I've never, like, it's something you think about.
I can't
but,
take
like,
credit for it.
It's something you think
I
about,
can't-
but you
I
put it
can't-
in that context.
I can't take
you
credit
know?
for it. He gave me that piece of advice. I stuck with it. So if you want to be a good engineman, be good at being a problem solver, be good at being a communicator. So that's 1. 2, a drill, just randomly while you're out, drive, pull up to an unknown building and stretch that building. You know,
How many times a tour are you doing that?
not every tour, but that's a drill we do. Just, you know, you know, guys are in the back, they're on their phone, they're joking around, laughing, having a good time. Next thing you know, they pull up to a curb. Boss is like, fire on the 4th floor, fellas, go. Okay? And, 3rd one is know why you're doing it. Know why you took this job. This job is dirty. It's dangerous. It's exhausting. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get banged up. You're going to get burned. You're going to get battered and bruised. But know why you're doing it. And for me, we had a job the other day, and after the job, I asked to take a group photo. And the reason I took that group photo is because me and my 2 senior men were working. That doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
And I posted it. I'm not ashamed of it. I wrote, because of the men next to you. That's why I did. Because of you, I'm going to do everything humanly possible for you to go home and vice versa. So know why you're doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? It's not the pay. It's not the benefits. It's not the schedule. It's about, I'm part of something that's bigger than me. I got 1 brother. He lives in Maryland. I got a firehouse full of guys that will do anything for me. That's why I do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
You know, Mike, I'm going to leave it at that, man. There's nothing more I can say to that. So, thank you.
listen.
This has been a long time coming.
Listen, I'm a nobody, man. You had a politician. You had Jason Redman on here.
Nah, bro.
I hope,
This is what it's about,
I hope
bro.
I hope your viewers and everything don't plummet.
This is what they're craving. I have opportunities to talk to some people
Sure.
through this platform.
Sure.
But this is what got me started. This is what got me people to listen to me, was talking tactics.
Sure.
And I wanted to get guys that really do the job.
Sure.
I have to get back to that. And I have some great guests coming out in the future, but this is the guest I want. I want guys that are in the trenches,
Listen,
crawling down hallways, and I think that's what we got.
I appreciate the invite. I appreciate the opportunity to come here, man.
Yeah.
And like I said, I hope I just didn't plummet your ratings and,
No.
and your viewers.
Ratings, bro. We're in the ratings, man. We're in the engine. Again, thank you.
I thank you, man. I appreciate it.